Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 2, The Danger Below. Science fiction, fantasy, time travel. This is the Stories Told podcast, talking about worlds of stories told, from movies to TV shows and, of course, books. I'm E.W. Barnes, fiction author and avid fan of great stories. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds, thousands of stories told. Let's begin. Today I'm talking about the second episode of the new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power, which debuted on Amazon on September 2nd, 2022. And please note, beyond here there will be spoilers. So if you have not already seen the show and don't want to know what's going to happen, now's the time to click over to those wild weather videos. I'm going to start right off and say I think this second episode was even better than the first. The episode, entitled Adrift, focused on 4 main character storylines: Galadriel, Elrond, an elf named Arondir with a woman named Bronwyn, and the Harfoot Nori with Meteor Man, which the closed captions on the show named as The Stranger. We start the episode with Galadriel swimming in the sea. In the previous episode, she had decided not to return to the Undying Lands, jumping off her ship before they reached the land. Now she's alone and swimming back to Middle-earth. She discovers the survivors on the wreck of a ship, men and women who grudgingly accept her on board until they realize she's an elf. I liked the tension in this scene. We saw a little man-elf conflict in the first episode, and this scene drove home the distrust and division that existed between the immortal elves and the men who are subject to death. We discover the cause of the shipwreck. It's a giant sea serpent, which returns to finish the job until only Galadriel and a man named Halbrand survive, setting the stage for an alliance, and perhaps even a friendship between them. As we return to Elrond, he is in deep conversation with Celebrimbor, a respected elven smith. They're talking about a famous hammer that was wielded by Celebrimbor's grandfather, Feanor. I really enjoyed this scene because it filled in more backstory for the world, but did so naturally as a casual conversation between the two. Celebrimbor is ambitious and wants to build a mighty foundry, but there are not enough elves for the labor. Elrond suggests that they ask the dwarves, which takes us to the halls of Khazad-dûm. I was so excited to see this so soon in the series, and the scenes and sets for the dwarven halls were amazing. We get to also see our first dwarf woman, Disa, a wonderful and dynamic character. We also learn that the dwarves don't trust the elves either, and there's some history for that mistrust. But they're especially distrustful now because they just discovered something special in their minds. We can assume it is the mithril for which they delved too greedily and too deep and awakened Durin's bane. I had my doubts about Nori and the Harfoots in this series, because other than Smeagol killing Deagol for the ring, hobbit-like creatures did not appear much in the history of Middle-earth. That being said, I really liked the interactions between Nori and Meteor Man. She feels compelled to help him, but they don't speak the same language, and he reacts to her presence with defensive powers that lifts rocks and shakes trees. At first I thought this might mean he was the wizard Wadagast the Brown. But as their interactions continued, and we learned more about him, I think that guess was incorrect, and here's why. In one scene, he learns the Harfoots use fireflies in their lanterns, and frees them from their cages. Then he talks to the fireflies, and they form a figure like a star constellation. So far so good, very Radagast, in freeing creatures and talking with them. But then the fireflies die. I think maybe Meteor Man / the Stranger is Sauron. Or maybe Saruman. I can see him using a creature up to accomplish his ends. Either way, I'm a little worried for Nori. We met Arondir and Bronwyn in the previous episode. Arondir was an elf assigned to guard the lands of men, but was ordered to leave when the High King Gil-galad decided that evil was gone from Middle-earth. Arondir visits Bronwyn to say goodbye when they learn of a strange pestilence in a nearby town. They journey to the town and discover all the people are missing, and there are dark and creepy tunnels that have been dug under the homes. Bronwyn returns to her town to warn her people, and Arondir drops into one of the holes to search the tunnels. Dark and creepy is an apt description for these scenes. An orc breaks through the floor of Bronwyn's home just as she returns, threatening her and her son. Arondir is chased through these claustrophobic tunnels by an unknown creature, and just as we think he has escaped, he is pulled into darkness by clawed hands. I titled this podcast episode The Danger Below because each of these storylines featured a threat below the waves, beneath the ground, deep in the earth, or under the surface, which made the episode chilling and exciting at the same time. On a scale from 1 to 10, I give this episode a 9. And so the questions yet to be answered are: who is Meteor Man / the Stranger? Who is Halbrand? And what happened to Arondir? And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for being here. Join me next time when we talk about the Rings of Power episode 3. See you then! If you enjoyed the show, please click that like button. And if you subscribe and click the bell icon, you'll get notifications when the next episode airs. This has been the Stories Told podcast. Thanks for being here.